is very clear on the overall national policy objective and goal. So the country must agree what exactly they want from that RPL system. In fact, if I put it differently, what is the problem statement? What are we solving for to be at the same page as to what is the national problem that we feel that this policy, or for example, this system is going to people that have been excluded, marginalized, and once the competencies and skills and knowledge are visible, then what the owners or the bearers of those skills, competencies, and knowledge will do with that is their own business. They can definitely choose. But the last one, of course, this is very common, is benchmarking, comparing case studies. And that is why you see the agencies that were very critical were ourselves. We are the only private, and everybody else here is government and the development partners. So you realize that the Juakali sector in Kenya was very forceful and critical in creating the demand. But of course, we brought other marginalized groups and constituencies for it. So the first was policy framework. The second one, like I said yesterday, and this ILO is going to be standalone. It's not going to be standalone or rather separate. So the first point is, it is in re-entry into formal education career programs. So that is why it was very critical. As to whether we have adequately and effectively integrated, it's still work in progress. Then we said, and this I said, it is also being implemented. So once we integrate, then we implement. So we integrate within the legal framework, we integrate within the policy framework, then we start to implement. So when it comes to implementation, now that is where the rubber meets the road, because you need legal back mandate as you implement, because you realize that. So for us, we implement our RPL system, and then you'll see that because this is standard, I'm sure Kailash, Engineer Suleiman, and Honorable SG are very familiar. Countries have adopted national qualifications framework as a basis to also help in the conversation about RPL. So our pathways are there, or we call them the sub-frameworks of our national qualification framework. But you can see it is very deliberate. It is within the education and training progression pathways in Kenya. So we have all the paths. So the first one is what we call, is a straight one in the red. So it's one that from basic, which is primary, secondary, you go to bachelor's to university, all the way to a flowing. So that is the RPL system. So the reason why this somehow yellowish, but then from birth to death, where and how and what step. But once you now come forward for recognition, formal education training system, and that is why it has helped us a lot. In fact, like I gave the history, we never used to have a national 15 years ago. It's when we really got the crunch of the battle. But we used to work with industrial training, as I said.
Elevated and created that one, but then we reviewed this. This is an amendment. There never used to be a body here. It was a directorate. So the National Industrial Training Authority was created after this was amended. It used to be another 2007. It used to be 2007. So it became 2011. Created a body called the National Industrial Training Authority that now is in charge of this. Then over it and over, we never also used to activate a legal framework. So you can see from 2010, between 2010 and 2014, we were very forceful. We created the framework, the legal framework. We amended one, we created a new one, and we created a new one. This one did not exist at all. So this is the only one plot. So you can see the power of a legal framework. But then this now is one that harmonizes, irrespective of which, and integrates. So that is our experience of a system. And like Engineer Suleiman said, it's very tricky to agree and coordinate government entities without a legal framework. So this has helped us a lot. And so the RPL system is good to be backed So this institutional framework is in the policy, right? At least this is in the policy, the RPL policy framework for Kenya. It is not in any act, but because the KNQF Act gives power to the Qualifications Authority to coordinate agencies across the entire landscape of education training. This institutional framework helps. And you will see, we argued around which ministry. I remember yesterday there was where the domiciling. The reason why we did not use the word the Ministry of Education, after long debate, we left it hanging in our institutional framework. We said the ministry. And people argued, which ministry? You have to be clear. So we argued until people were said, obviously, it is the Ministry of Education. But stakeholders said no. The powers that be can choose and take RPL to any other ministry. And it is happening now. It has been taken, without changing the policy, it has been taken to the office of the Deputy President. But all the challenge, of course, RPL system is funding. So there are other systems or there are other mechanisms you need to create apart from the overall RPL system. One of which is a clear funding or financing system or model or whatever it is, or mechanism, whatever you call it. So that is very, for sustainability, you need other smaller systems, and there's a world of systems, or mechanisms to support the main RPL system, so that it's sustainable and it is effective, especially financing. So let me give you a sample of a good Kenya. We began by also doing an attempt to cost the entire process, an attempt to cost and allocate what we call differentiated unit cost. You need to simulate a scenario, and your assignment has to allocate and invest in its people. If there is value in the outcomes of this, and it has to be very clear, we went to Treasury, National Treasury, the Ministry of Finance, and they asked us what is in it for the country, economically, jobs creation, break it down. So we had labor economists who said for my job creation, this. We had people in human resource, national human resource planning, they said in terms of human capital for the country, this is it. We had people from revenue collection said, wow, this brings this to the GDP. So you have to put up a model and a case study for a country. Actually, we had people who say, oh, the way it is funded in South Africa, oh, the way it is funded in France, said we are competing no business. We are not French. We are not South Africans. We are not Americans, for example. So we don't care how it happens there, because the resources are local. So if the government is going to collect resources, revenue from Kenyans and put it there must be justification why you are collecting. So that is one. And the government said we can create, there are funds, I think there are existing funds, for example. I know, like I hear there is net fund. So they looked at the existing government public funds. Some have been established by law, others. So there's a whole thing of saying how much can be tapped from this to fund RPL. So that was one. So the other one, so that is government. The other one was the candidates, the people, the beneficiaries. How much can they put up? If the cost is, for example, Kenya shillings, 30,000 Kenya shillings, for example.
How the total actually cost that was worked out in 2009 was around 20,000 rupees. But we asked, the candidates could not pay 20,000 because they were not even earning 20,000 per month. They were earning only something like 10,000 rupees. So what we said, we are going to break down the fees for RPL. So when they apply, they pay one fee. And then when they finish Of course, it takes 3 to 6 months for them to finish the portfolio. So by the time they go for assessment, then they pay the second fees. And in all, they would pay 6,000 rupees, which would be approximately 3,000 for the first part and 3,000 for the second part, which made it easier for the person to be able to cater for that extra cost that they have for RPL. That was for Mauritius. Recently, I'm still working actually in Liberia, and I tried to get the unit cost to work out what would be the cost for RPL. Impossible to get figures. I couldn't get the figures. So I went to the training institutions. I said, okay, we are going to have people RPL against automobile, qualifications. So how much do you charge for your course? So I got to understand it was around $150 for the course for 1 year. And then I said, okay, so now what would be the cost? It is very, I would say, maybe I can't get the words, it was very biased. I said, how much should the RPL applicant pay? So they said, I tried government institutions, I tried private, public-private sector people, I met everybody. I even met the unions. And I said, how much do you think they could pay? So everybody came between $75 and $100. So of course, $75. They didn't went to the $100, obviously. So they said $75. But it was just a biased number. There is no rationale behind why it is going to be $75. And I cannot justify it. But one good thing that we could do in Mauritius, we have the training levy. We have a levy. The levy is actually a tax which is paid by employers on the salary, on the general salary that they pay to employees. It's a very small tax, 2%. And that tax, it goes, of course, to the Ministry of Finance. And then the Ministry of Finance give it back for Human Resource Development Council, which is actually for, or skills development. So what the Human Resource Development Council, which receive all this cash from government, they do, they allocate a little bit to RPL. So you would say that this was a very ideal situation where all the candidates who would come for RPL would get the funding from government. So in the very first budget that was allocated 5,000 in those subsectors. Now, after the expression of interest comes, now the pre-screening to predetermine for your eligibility. Then when it is provisionally decided that you can easily proceed, we invite you to now fill the application form. The actual application for assessment. The actual application for assessment. And then you can see you are counseled, you are facilitated, you are helped to collect the portfolio. The portfolio of evidence is assessed. You can see the numbers. And those that proceed, you do the summative assessment. I don't want to speak about the figures. You can see the attrition rates. And something that speaks to it. Just the first one, of a good RPL system for a country, from a Kenyan perspective, it's good to have a clear target group. It's good to be intentional. In as much as it can be, for the first point, it can be for everybody. So the first target group is everybody and anybody who has competencies. At least that includes everybody. That's the first target group. It looks very open, but it is a target group. So be clear that it is for anyone, anybody who has competencies, who can demonstrate competencies. Because you are likely to have
very interesting conversations around it. But of course, they don't have corresponding qualifications. So if you like papers, so that is the first target group. If a system that targets anyone who has competencies, full stop, but they don't have a way of proof, especially papers. They can prove otherwise, by the way. It is not always papers that prove that you have competencies. Yeah. I mean, I can prove by working here, and I don't need a paper, and I deliver. That is a way of proving competence. But for RPL system, it is tied to papers. So that is a good targeting. Of course, the other one, please, RPL is not necessary for uneducated people. Because there is a tendency to imagine the reason why you don't have papers is because you are not properly schooled or properly educated. Not necessarily. We have people who are highly educated and they have papers, but those papers do not correspond to the competencies they currently hold. But they are highly educated. So they have competencies, they have some papers, but those papers are not corresponding to the competencies. So that is important. Somebody has a question? Oh, yeah. Was that high for uneducated? Not necessarily. The word is RPL is not necessarily for uneducated people. Not necessarily. Actually, we have uneducated people that have competencies. Yes.
Enter to learn the technical skills to be an entrepreneur. Because with all his qualifications, some from abroad, he doesn't have any competency to get a business for making ends meet. He was enrolled in my center and he is now an entrepreneur, but just within 5 weeks of training.
It's only for people who are not educated. That is the perception. You will find. So that is what we are discounting. We are saying it is not necessarily for people who are not educated. It's just, maybe the English is mixing up. Yeah, is it? Yeah. Is it clear? Or can we make progress so that you don't consume a lot of time? It looks like it's burning.
So, until I saw him using his graduation gown on the status of WhatsApp. I said, Abraham, you went to school, say, I'm
into your nerves, into your feelings, is not RPL. If you use too much head, you will not get it correct. But nevertheless, thank you for the feedback. So I think the second one is just obvious, that of course, we have people with no competence. They cannot demonstrate competencies. We have people who cannot demonstrate competencies, but they have papers. Yeah? So they have papers, but what the paper says, they cannot demonstrate. So those people, please, they are not for RPL. Yeah? Because of course, this is a practice. Could be a good, it's a practice, so you don't have to borrow. But because if you assess somebody who already cannot demonstrate what they claim, either by paper or not, then that paper is going to mix you up, because what they are trying to push to validate the paper that they have through another system. Yeah, it's an attempt to be clever. It's an attempt to be clever. So so please, they will come forward, and sometimes they can hide the papers, or sometimes they can tell you they have the papers. Yeah, the competence. Yeah. So tell them, put your papers aside. What did you claim? Even if you claim what is in the paper, that is okay. But let's go. Is that the point? Yeah. So that you are careful. But I'm not saying you block them. It's just for you to be sensitive that they will come and they will likely be very forceful that I am qualified. Then why don't you use the other paper that you have? Of course, the other point is people got their papers long ago. I have my paper 15 years, 20 years ago, so it is not current. But they want to validate it because they want it to be brought forward. So the same competence they had 20 years ago, they want to purport to have it now. All right? Yeah, so it can be very tricky. and they are very good. Some of them are politicians, so they can.
But they use only their experience. As well, from our friend from Kenya, it is the same. You get stakeholders to buy in RPL. Because if you don't see benefits, different stakeholders do not actually buy in RPL. In terms of economic, here we talk about government. Why should government encourage RPL? Because through RPL, we're going to have an increase in employability, an increase in labor mobility. And remember today, when we talk about labor mobility, it is not only within our country, it is within the region. It is within the continent. And this is the reason why we have SASASNet here. It is because we are working towards increasing labor mobility within the continent. Educational, that I don't have to tell you, you are the people who are going to be living it actually. Better access to formal education and training, and of course, strengthening our qualification system. Here we're not talking about qualifications framework, but the whole educational system. Social inclusion and recognition, I have given you so many examples. Promoting culture of lifelong learning, and this is mainly from UNESCO, even though it is there, ILO, it is UNESCO who has taken this lifelong learning, and RPL as being the bataille du cheval du bataille, comment on dit ça? Words in French, which we use, but which we cannot get the right exact word in English. But it is actually the objectives and the goals that UNESCO has put, in terms of promoting lifelong learning through RPL. I am being paid a certain amount, and in many countries we don't have minimum wage. So I will get whatever the employer decides to give me. But when I get my RPL certificate, the same employer will have better, I would say, consideration towards me. Because he knows now I can leave the job and I can get another job. So I may be getting better returns from the actual employer, but in my professional life, I have now the choice between different employers because I have a piece of paper to show that I am RPL and this is my worth. Of course, and certification. Now this is a process, different, what we will call learning outcomes and so on. It was there. And then referral. Here it is what we call, some pre-screening happens. Pascal will here, so you can see there is this support which we can get from development partners. Threats, limited funding, and of course, reliance on donors and international partners. Very often, whenever we start RPL in any country, the country depends a lot on international partners. But what happens after the partners pull out? These are some examples of good practices. Anyway, I will cover it, in my other session. Guiding principles. This is a proposed RPL model for Jordan, the guiding principles. Voluntary participation. We don't force anybody, RPL. We make it known, now if you want to come, of course you come. Recognition of all types of learning. Accessibility. Assessment. Progression, quality assurance, linkages to MQF. And I think this is important if ever we are going to talk about lifelong learning and also about credibility of the qualification. Documentation, support to candidates clarity of roles. All these actually principles, I think, are important to RPL. So this is a proposed model for RPL, the one which we came up with. So you can see there is no
academic competencies that cut across all the trades in all sectors. Or competencies. You listen trade. Here we take I think plumbing. Okay, no, it's generic. So then the others, personal statement. So these are like the assessment tools we designed for the RPL. Then section 2, supervisor's report. Like the master. This is really completion. So these are all of the assessment tools for RPL. Significant players. Those everybody that also in the portfolio.
Namibia case. Namibia, like many African countries, Namibia, as you know, may be very large in terms of surface area. The country is very large, but population is very small. Apprenticeship or self-learning, but yet they lack this piece of paper, what we call formal qualification. We had so many examples that have been shared among us of people who are doing very well, but who do not have that piece of paper. And to address that, Namibia introduced RPL to improve. And this is the reason why I was giving you the mic. I wanted you to tell me why you want to introduce RPL in Nigeria. Nigeria introduced RPL to improve access to formal education, lifelong learning, promote lifelong learning, support upskilling of the workforce. You know, if you want to develop a country, you need investors. Now, whether it is local investors or foreign investors, they will only come to your country if they find that there is a skilled workforce. And to get that skilled workforce, they would like to see now how many people are qualified for the job or for that particular industry that they want to set up in that particular country.
And that is what we are lacking in Nigeria, records of competence.
Yes. Also to address skill shortages in certain key sectors. So they introduced in 2016 the policy on RPL. Just look at what I'm saying. They introduced the policy. They found the reason why they needed RPL, and then they introduced the policy. Then, of course, the Namibian Qualifications Authority was also set up, in the years 2005 or so. But the RPL part was, of course, added a bit later. And the NQA had in the law, because the law of the NQA was very much based on the law of Mauritius. So, NQA has the function to oversee RPL implementation, quality assurance, and certification. And in many of our African countries, we have the Ministry of Higher Education, which was providing strategic oversight. Training providers were being used as RPL assessment and support centers. And of course, we had the participation, and this is where I insist on whenever we create those panels of assessment. Let us take the employers, let us take the industry bodies and community leaders to participate in the RPL assessment. Because also you can use people in the hospitality industry, ICT. There are so many cases that you can use as examples to RPL. These are the achievements. In the beginning, institutional capacity. You agree with me, they have the money, they can do it. They have the means. Here in 2009. Now you will tell me why 2009. I joined the authority in 2006. I think I was very much inclined to do RPL demolitions. I told you I was a managing director of a brewery. So we used
So on RPL briefs, use whatever you get, contextualize it, and then you present it to the minister.
With 6 pillars, as national education, a new initiative with 6 pillars, as TVET and data and digitization as one of the very important pillars in revamping education. The minister has vowed that Nigeria will never again be producing graduates that are not employable. And he also has accepted and using the maxim of NBTE leadership that it's skills, not degrees. To definitely be skills certificates or certificates. The minister has always recognized the fact that Nigeria, in West Africa, being around 400 million, Nigeria is around 250 million of this population. We have massive human potential and the world the minister has given and continues to give all the support that NBTE needs. And of course, our very, very indefatigable ears is always with the minister at all times. Those are open. I see him quite often coming to really discuss things about TVET program. The minister has really done a lot in getting substantial budget supplementation for TVET program, if you have seen it. He has a dedicated team that really works on TVET day in, day out with the director of technical education, which is she said. That's how I'm going to be good at. So honestly, we are very happy. And we're taking the advocacy off also, particularly up north. Now we are really pushing have tried to find a catchword for it in the women house speaking areas of ours. We have been calling them now education about Mekaya Banikarandawa. And it's been championed by the So honestly, we have created a lot of groups around that. What skills do you have? Not what you have read. So skills certificates, skills, not degrees. Skills, not degrees. So recognition of previous learning. I was very excited almost 2 years back because I'm one of those unrepentant also people that are convinced in skills of degrees. I've been visiting Prof even before I joined the ministry. And he took me through RPL. He told me that Kenya is ahead. He was in Kenya, and then Kenya has done a lot of things and got a collaboration. So I had about Kenya almost 2 years ago, and we were proud of this partnership. And Nigeria will overtake Kenya. So we have a lot of people that have the skills: tiling, plumbing, electrical work, refrigeration, auto mechanics, turbine, name it. This different, let me not double into it, I don't know. And this students are so those who have the skill, as the Prof always said, regardless of where you learn it from, if I'm right, let's test your competency, and that's a training of the highest level that has been done here to take it down. Show us what you got, and then you'll be given the equivalent of NSQ certification, and then you can join as hard user say, either if you want to join technical or you want to be the boss of your own, you go. That is what we need for the proposed the $1 trillion economy that our president has always been talking about. We need industrialization win in capacity. And I really want to thank NBTE, please. We're proud of NBTE management. We are very proud. Maybe I'll go back to have the diploma and one of the technical things now. Okay. Or you assess me by RPL. Thank you. The minister will probably brief you more on this, and I'm sure it will be more so official. I'm sure the team will brief him. So, distinguished senior tutors here, we really want to welcome you and believe in you in really the next step of taking the millions of Nigerian youth, back to functional learning and education, particularly that of school and elementary, that we really want to get back to learning across the country. Thank you very much.